Post-Brexit Britain has a historic opportunity to take on a new role as the global champion of free trade, Theresa May will say. The Prime Minister will make her first foreign policy speech at the Lord Mayor's banquet in the City of London. She will also say more needs to be done to ensure communities are not left behind by the forces of globalisation. Labour said her actions had betrayed her words and she simply represented more of the same failed politics. Mrs May envisages a stronger role for government in developing an industrial strategy aimed at spreading wealth more evenly across the country. She will tell her audience that after Donald Trump's victory in the US presidential election, change is in the air and it will be essential to help those who have experienced downsides of globalization. Mrs May is said to say, to be the true global champion of free trade in this new modern world, we also need to do something to help those families and communities who can actually lose out from it. Not standing inflexibly, refusing to change and still fighting the battles of the past, but adapting to the moment, evolving our thinking and seizing the opportunities ahead. That is the kind of leadership we need today. And I believe that it is Britain's historic global opportunity to provide it. Mrs May will say leaving the EU shows how a free, flexible, ambitious country can step up to a new global role. This is a new direction, a new approach to managing the forces of globalization so that they work for all, and it is the course on which the government I lead has embarked, she will say. Some Conservatives are questioning Mrs May's refusal to entertain any role for the interim UKIP leader in building links with the US administration, but a Downing Street source played down any disquiet. The source said any involvement for Mr Farage was categorically not going to happen, adding, Farage is doing a very good PR job of trying to make himself seem indispensable. Mrs May's spokeswoman told reporters the relationship between Mr Trump and the PM was working well following an initial phone call that was very warm in tone. Arriving in Brussels for a meeting with his EU counterparts, Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, there was a lot to be positive about following Mr Trump's election. It is very important not to prejudge the president election or his administration, he added. She will cite the UK's recent agreement to keep Nissan car production in the northeast of England and the development of a global hub to repair and maintain fighter aircraft in Wales as evidence of an industrial strategy that is competitive and takes wider social and cultural factors into account. Mrs May, who has called for more employee representatives on company boards and greater disclosure about corporate pay, will also pledge to crack down on unfair business practices which undermine faith in capitalism and free markets. The Guildhall speech is one of the major foreign policy and security addresses which the Prime Minister makes every year. Shadow Lord President of the Council John Trickett said, Theresa May has spent the early days of her time in Number 10 giving speeches about spreading opportunity and providing leadership, but her actions have betrayed her. She talks about leading Europe, but has no plan for Brexit. She talks about extending opportunity, but Britain's working people are worse off. And she talks about transforming the economy, but all that is on offer is more cuts, poor investment and little, if any, growth. Liberal Democrat leader Tim Farron said, Theresa May is trying to have her cake and eat it. She talks about being pro-business but won't offer the one thing business leaders needs most, clarity on her plans for Britain's future with Europe. She can't have it both ways. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage's meeting with US President-elect Mr Trump over the weekend meant he was the first British politician to meet Mr Trump since his election.